Well, Jeff, I'm a little verklempt. However, I was there in California during the tumultuous 1960s and have stories to tell about coming of age then. But my story tonight takes place at the end of that decade and is more personal. It's about just 2 dates in 1969 on which things happened. The first date is June 28th. On that day, I married David Rose, whom some of you may know. In my home state, I still look like that. I was there, and it was a great thing that happened, though David has forgotten the import of that date almost every year since. The second date is July 20th, 1969, not even a month later. I was at Tanglewood with David and friends Nancy and Kemp. We were there for the BSO's afternoon performance. Rain had been forecast, but we bought lawn tickets anyway. Armed with a blanket, a tarp, 2 umbrellas, and a delicious lunch, we staked out a spot not far from the shed. The lawn at Tanglewood has its own appeal for me. You can recline, loll, look at the grass, the trees, the sky. I liked to imagine the Berkshire forest stretching out for miles beyond this inhabited clearing. I loved feeling the music sweep out from the shed. We were still eating our lunch as the BSO began its program. The first half consisted of a Renaissance piece, I don't remember now, and one of Bach's Brandenburgs. During intermission, we caught up on an unfolding event, one that was followed by millions of people around the globe, exponentially more than the 100+ who had attended our wedding. The US and Russia had been in a Cold War space race since 1957 with the successful launch of Sputnik. Now, not quite 12 years later, the US was in a position to be the first to put a human on the moon. Apollo 11 astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins had been on their way since July 16th and were orbiting the moon, so they were certainly on everyone's mind. Kemp had brought a transistor radio, and as we listened to that, Houston said that the conditions were right for a landing attempt. I looked up. The moon, newly risen, pale, and barely visible in our gray afternoon sky, was unchanged by its new satellite. On Earth, meanwhile, the air had turned chilly, the dampness becoming drizzle. We pulled on sweaters and jackets and unfolded the tarp. We lay close together on the blanket and made the tarp a body-high tent. At our heads, we set the opened umbrellas. Other people on the lawn made similar shelters. We all became a shanty town of wool, plastic, nylon, and wire. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, was last on the program. The rain continued, sounding lightly on our tarp. During the last movement, Kemp propped himself up on one elbow and listened to the radio again, pressing it to his ear. "They've started the descent," he relayed, still listening. The music continued. They're at 50,000 feet. The orchestra began a lengthy coda. 20,000 feet. The music accelerated, varying and combining themes. 15,000 feet. Then came a moment when I thought the piece would end first. The music had crescendoed to a fortissimo as the orchestra pounded out C major chords The dominant, then the tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant. No, I was wrong. It went on. That's Beethoven for you. The bassoon, French horn, and flutes each took up a theme quietly. Then the orchestra swelled again and continued, reiterating themes. The entire fourth movement of this C minor symphony is in C major, Beethoven's metaphor for life, light, and I think joy. 5,000. We sat up. Other people on the lawn had radios. There were whispers across blankets as they realized what was happening. Here I go. The music accelerated, as did my heart rate. The orchestra went into the final lengthy cadenzas. 100 feet. We held our collective breath. 50 feet. 30 feet. They've touched down. Tranquility Base here. The eagle has landed. Applause just like this boomed from the shed. On the lawn, we clapped and hollered. Someone on stage was making an announcement. We have just learned that the astronauts have landed safely on the moon. More applause, cheers, laughter. Suddenly, we seemed to know everyone. The orchestra played the Star-Spangled Banner, and everybody stood. We were there among the Tanglewood thousands, 4 people with 2 umbrellas, standing on a blanket on a lawn next to a shed in a clearing in the woods in the Berkshires, open but for clouds to the moon. For me, the thing that happened on July 20th, the very best thing on that day, was that the BSO and Beethoven, who also belongs to everyone, accompanied the astronauts as they touched down on that distant pale orb of ours. It was electric, musically very well timed, historic. You should have been there.